Sloan's is back this morning fixing the hydraulic line on the big combine. Once they get that done, we're going to fire right up. Skylar had that hydraulic hose replaced very quick. He's a great mechanic, in and out in almost no time. Dad is fired up the combine. He started picking. I did a subpar job cleaning my windows. Dangerous morning for it. Everything's so wet because it got down to like 45 last night. Very foggy this morning. Heavy dew on all the material and the wheels. When these get slippery, you got to have 2 points of contact if you're climbing on things like the tires, or you'll end up in the hospital pretty quick. I've heard stories like that before. The things you least expect that can take you out of commission for a couple weeks or months or years or your life. The hood is soaked. Wow. The 14830 out here isn't really blowing the doors off like I was expecting it to. Maybe my expectations were too high. It's about 5 to 10 bushels below the 11135 next door, but also on a non-comparable field. Bad news. Got a fire of some sort over there. It looks close, but I just talked to someone who said that there's a field fire up at Doran's that's north of Mattoons. It would be 12 or 13 miles north of us here. We're south of Lakeland College still. That's growing. A little bit of room on the front still on that truck. The field fire appears to be put out. The intel I received, which is secondhand, is actually a neighbor from down here has a field north of town. A bearing went out on his combine, lit the field on fire. They were able to save the combine in the head, as far as I'm aware, get the field fire put out after losing a handful of acres of corn. Don't know how true that is, but it's got to be fairly close. There's usually not a lot of exaggeration in the information I have access to, depending on the source. Some sources, you all know, you have to be very careful with. We've about got the last bin here topped off. I think 1 or 2 more loads will do it. Then we're going to be hauling 5 miles west. We're running out of bin space really quick. It's hard to tell through the camera, but it is beautiful outside today. High of like 73, my type of weather. I even enjoy the chilliness in the morning. It's my dreamland time of year. That load ought to do it for the bin. Dad's running over to the bin real quick. I'm going to fill the grain cart and then load this one. It won't go in this bin. It'll move to the next site. Corn is doing corn things. Combine showing the average yield at 228 dry, holding pretty steady there in that 230 range, so it's decent. My nice clean grain tank window looks horrible. When we power washed off that hydraulic leak area, it blew a bunch of stuff up against here, so it's going to need cleaned again, and it probably won't be this season. It's amazing in corn with this machine how fast this window gets covered up. This combine just chews through the corn. It's actually really impressive. Historically, when you came into a field like this to split open a new land or pick a new pass through the field, you'd want to find what we call the bulk row. It's where 2 planter passes meet. If the planter driver was very dialed in that day, they can be hard to locate. Since Dad runs our corn planter, usually you can find one eventually. He just cuts one too short or too wide, and it leaves a little bit of a gap or a narrow spot that's easy to identify, like that right there, I believe, is one. With the technology we have now, like the auto path system, you don't have to look that hard. On the corn planter, we have the implement guidance that not only steers the tractor, but keeps note of all of the passes. These lines with the auto path system tell you where you need to line up. So that is the center of a 12-row pass. That's the center of a 12-row pass. Every blue line is the center of a 12-row pass. So on this end row, we just had one planter pass, 24 rows. Here's 12, here's 12. The big green arrows are the main travel paths with the planter and also the direction. So here Dad is going west, and that's his arrow. You can see it's right in the split between the two hybrids here on the map. There's not two hybrids, I just always keep the planter split to make record keeping simpler. We'll just pull over here, grab this blue line, and go. It lined me up, just take my word for it. Hard to tell from up here. That's the sound of the row sense engaging. Some people say the auto path with implement guidance and RTK is so good you don't even need the row sense feelers anymore. Here we are lined up on that pass. It's that easy nowadays. It's really not do or die for combining. Where I've heard auto path being great is for side dressing. I used it in the sprayer with corn fungicide. It was helpful. Do I really need it? Probably not. Kind of like the combine. It's a luxury add-on. Side dressing though, when it follows your planter as it goes through the field, not even your tractor, the actual planter wiggles, that adds up pretty quick for efficiency and less crop damage. Check out the fill speed on this. I apologize about the wire. I believe that's from the machine sink. They must have not got it zip tied out of the way. And this window is really bugging me for how messy it is. Keeping the belly of the beast full at this speed. My unsupervised combine minute is over. Just wanted to get a truck loaded for the next auger. Bin. How do you know when it's full? Beautiful. Wow. Looks like I've done this before. If I just loaded the back, I'd easily have 1,400 bushels on here. Not very good at my job. If the combine is a fire hose, the Elmer's Hallmaster is a 24-inch water main when it comes to moving grain. This thing is just crazy. I usually back it down once the pile starts to come up or it'll be shooting off the sides. Auger set at that smaller bin site. We've loaded 2 trucks. Dad just radioed that he's almost out of diesel exhaust fluid. Our bin site that we've been loading at has a fuel tank, just no diesel exhaust fluid tank. So I'm gonna run home really quick and just get a couple jugs to manually insert some DEF to get us at least through the end of the day. I think within the next 24 hours, the combine will be back at the main farm fueling up. That's where we keep all of our DEF, and we don't have one of those fancy service trucks or trailers. Yes, it will be somewhat inconvenient to stop the grain cart for 10 minutes to go get diesel exhaust fluid. However, given today's trying times, I still don't know that I can justify a fuel trailer. A little bit of inconvenience does not make up for a massive amount of financial impairment. Combine's in there somewhere. I rigged these containers up last year for situations just like this. Normally, they never get used. Once in a blue moon, they're super handy. The jugs are $30 a piece at our local Rural King, 5.5 gallons. I don't go all the way to the top just because they get kind of heavy to get into the combine. Put a little reducer on here to get it into the def tank. This won't work. And it's pretty cheap and effective. Buys you time. Yeah, I think we determined last year that we have to keep at least 20 or 25 gallons in it just to pump.
I thought it was already down to about that level now.
We all have to do our part to save the environment. Back in action. My iPad overheated, so it's thinking about what it's done in the refrigerator. Dad finished another big field of corn. This was entirely Pioneer 14830. It made about 233 bushels per acre, about 12 bushels off of the field next door. That field is lower lying. Different hybrid over there, DeKalb 11135. There's some variability across these farms, even when there's just a stone's throw between them. One thing's for sure, disregarding any yield data from the deep ripper stuff I did out here, man, did it make these fields rough. I pulled up chunks last fall when I did it, and this spring when the planter went across the field, when the sprayer went across the field, they just sink into that soft dirt. I'm hard pressed to be motivated to really look into this deep tillage. I know it sounds good on paper. Maybe the yield data this year and over the next few years will convince me otherwise. I just don't see the benefit yet. Perhaps we need to be consistent and keep monitoring it. Just a lot of fuel, a lot of depreciation for something that I don't feel really returns fast, tangible results versus the alternative, whether it be minimal tillage or no tillage. Dad stopped in at that bin site, topped off his fuel tank, crossed the interstate overpass. He's coming up the lane here. You probably can't see him because of the sun. Right west of the interstate. Looks like my grandpa, uncle, and grandma are right here south of us, hooking up their head to cut what I believe is one of their last few fields of beans. They still got that loaner combine. Their S660 still waiting on the wiring harness to be replaced that burned up a week ago. They've got the privilege of running an S790 combine. Now, needless to say, that's quite the upgrade in combine for them, at least for the time being until their machine gets put back together. Now we are on the other side of the interstate. Dad's red pickups at the field we were at. It's like a whole different world across here. Light, less productive soil. For whatever reason, this corn is not dead at all. It's actually very green and extremely wet. 20%. I've seen the yield in the decent areas go anywhere from 225 to 280. Field average is only 207. You've got some pretty poor spots on the hill, and then that tree line on the north end just kills the yield. It's only a 17-acre patch, so anything working against you is going to add up pretty quick. Moisture is coming down a little bit there, 16%, 17, 270. What in the world is going on out here? The 64-65 DeKalb in that previous field surprised us to the upside. The dry average, despite not being our best field and having some trees around it, was like 214.
Yes, Andy.
Yeah, I'm moseying across right now. Where do you need me?
You at the south end of the 46.
For reference, this is the bean field that made 42, so we're not in a good area right here. We're hopping through this field to another cornfield on the north. Got another set of, I think, channel 21570. Don't ask me why all three of these farms aren't in the same crop. It would make a lot more sense logistically for them to be. They just aren't. Imagine that and head right towards the mud hole. It's got some kind of gravitational pull.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. You on the way back, or did you just leave? I just left, loaded.
We farm next to the interstate for my whole life. This is I-57. I've never really put much thought into it until I was just sitting at the other field waiting on a truck. It's pretty amazing as you watch the vehicles, specifically the semis, the heavy loads, go down the roads and realize how much industry there is here in the United States. Just the logistics behind the scenes, the truck drivers, every single person from A to Z that bring inputs, ship outputs, move everything around. It's really impressive, not only from a manufacturing standpoint, but just the whole totality of the U.S. industry. It's really, really neat to sit on the interstate and just watch the diversity and presumably the productivity. In today's times, they're probably not nearly as appreciative of us farmers as we are of them for what they do for the economy. They're probably upset with the dust from the combine smudging up their mirror-like chrome stacks on the old Peterbilt. No possible way that's good for the combine. Everyone's gone. Guess I'm walking home, or maybe I could go hitchhike. I'll figure something out, or the coyotes will find me. One of the two. See you tomorrow. Farming comes with enough unpredictability and chaos as it is. Weather, markets, equipment, we really never know what's hiding around the corner, waiting to surprise us and give us our next bad day. When the odds seem to continue to stack against you in multiple different facets of your operation, there is one place where we can eliminate surprises, and that is weed control. The last thing we want on our farm is to pull in a field at harvest time and be shocked by how much of a weed outbreak we have in a field because of improper management that led us to that point. Our farm is in the business of profitability and peace of mind. That's why early in the season, we start with Tendovo from Syngenta. When we apply it, it isn't just controlling weeds, it's protecting our soybeans potential right out of the gate. Tendovo offers us a clean start, held strong with long-lasting residual control, and most importantly, it stays out of our crop's way. Some herbicides can effectively take care of weeds. Sure, there's no arguing it. It may come at the cost of a stressed or slow canopy. If your beans don't close the rows fast enough, weeds can sneak back in, stealing yield and time when you least expect it. Now we can just sit in the combine seat and enjoy harvest. We're not fighting late season escapes that are causing feeding issues on the combine. They're not shading out our crop, stealing yield. And there simply isn't the shame of having a very weedy soybean field. The rows are clean, the beans are uniform, and the bin is filling exactly the way we'd like it to. Tendovo doesn't just save you headaches, it helps secure your return. And what we really like is that Tendovo can fit whatever management plan you are trying to run on your farm. Different soils, herbicide platforms, tillage practices, it's flexible enough to work with all of it in a way that maximizes effectiveness and profitability on your farm. In tough growing seasons and times like we're in now, and let's be honest, every single year, reliability is not negotiable. It is essential for our operation. That's exactly why we trust Tendovo to keep weeds down on our toughest, most challenging soybean acres as a great pre-emergence residual herbicide. It delivers three of my favorite things: clean fields, healthy soybeans, and most importantly, peace of mind. Sadly, I did not get eaten last night by wild animals. Dad had Jeff drive them all the way down to the Interstate overpass, and where Jeff went west to the bin site, Dad walked over the overpass to the other side to get the pickup, came and got me. So to make a long story short, I survived and have to work today. I doubt this pass yielded very well. When the trees are 10 times the height of the corn, they're gonna take a lot of water. Another bin will be topped off with that one. We will have 2 left. Space is getting tight. This 215/70 is holding its own even on a pretty challenging farm. There's some bad spots, clay knobs that are dead, and there's some good spots. I've seen it hit 250 to 260. Like this area, 230, 200. 190 all over the place, 190, 200. It's a variability. We climb up off of that 217, 235, 217. For this farm on this year, if you average 210, you're going to be thrilled. On to the next field. This one had that nice tile pattern installed last winter, so I bet it's rough too. A tile plow is basically just a gigantic deep ripper. The previous field really started to taper off once we got to the high ground. It finished at 202 an acre. The field just north, same hybrid, different field, even though it's right across the road. I think it made 205 at channel 215/70. For the year for the farm, that is still decent. I thought it would average a little higher though than it did. It really tapered off at the end. How, oh how, did that pile of corn get there? Wouldn't know anything about it. Yesterday I mentioned the interstate. Today we're by the railroad tracks. There's a full train going through here probably every 30 to 45 minutes. Perfect example. Another train headed the opposite direction 30 minutes later. This used to be a double rail track. Now it's all single rail except for where they have sidings. With computers, GPS, load management, I think it's not as big of a deal as it used to be. And as a driver, when you cross the tracks, you don't have to worry about two trains, you just have to worry about one. There goes another train. It's been 15 minutes or so since I reported the second train, and there's a third train. They're just moving down the CN rail. Let's play a quick game of where are the new tile laterals at. There's one. Another field wrapped up. Pioneer 13050 on fairly productive soil. We got an average of about 230 dry, around 14% moisture out here. Nothing exceptional in yields this year. That 260 we picked, April planted, 14830, closer to Matt Toon, definitely going to be the top, and it's actually our best by 15 bushels, so something statistically different happened up there to bump the yield 15 bushels, because the 14830 down here on comparably productive ground only did 230. So the stars aligned in some way, shape, or form. Dad's gonna run the combine to the fuel tank. I'm gonna go to the grain bin, and we're going to shift our management here a little bit. Go to the next field. Jeff's on top of the bin, so it's a good thing I showed up. She's full. Yeah, it does. That's not good.
No.
That's a good thing that did that then and not when we were up there.
Yeah, it'd be like that one that came other than the cylinder broke.
Did it vibrate loose?
I don't know.
Probably.
Does this turn, I wonder? Maybe that, no.
Nope. It's gotta be.
You can take that pin out and...
I realized there that everyone wants to clean the combine windows, the grain cart, the semis. No one ever thinks to clean the auger tractor's windows so you can actually see what's going on with the 74-foot auger behind you. Really, you don't need to see as long as you can hear the muffled yelling of your family members. Wagons are stuffed full, just like that corn bin we topped off. It's almost coming out the side door. Hey, someone's field's getting a little green. Don't know them. Wasn't us. We just knocked out another small field. It was a little bit disappointing on a Class A farm, so pretty productive soil, planted the 16th or the 17th of May, channel 215/70. I was expecting some pretty good yields out here. This isn't historically one of our best farms though for the season, and with that April planted Pioneer corn 1.5 miles to the northwest doing 260, I just expected a little bit better. This finished right at like 203 or 204 dry. It's kind of an outlier. There were only two noteworthy things. A lot of green snap from wind damage or something hit out here. We had a lot of stand reduction later in the season. I think this 215/70 is a little bit sensitive to wind like that. And then the ear I found on the ground, I don't know what kind of spot this was in. Those kernels died really early. Perhaps this field just got caught in a microcosm that caught less rain. on a really dry year, individual differences and variations in rainfall can have drastic impacts on yields. This doing 200 and change is fairly disappointing. I thought when this hybrid was in the low 200s to 210 on some of those rough farms a couple miles south, we'd have 230 bushel corn here, yet 205 is all we got. We got little shriveled up kernels. I think the drought and the wind hit harder here for whatever reason. It's beyond my control, it's just my analysis. 2 more fields to go. You gotta do what you gotta do to get to the fuel tank sometimes. I don't know if that's been fueled up or not. It's not my problem. Fill up the grain cart because I was flashing red after 4 days of running corn. I'm pondering if the field-to-field variability on that last field with the channel 21570 versus the 14830 up the road we picked at the beginning of corn harvest, 60 bushels an acre difference, has less to do with the hybrid, maybe slightly to do with the field, and mostly to do with the planting date. So I looked at the rainfall data. The April planted corn got 5 more inches in the growing season. Now, a bulk of that was in April. It does apply though when there's a dry finish to the season. The April planted corn doesn't die as quickly or has more time to maximize water underground, and the drought doesn't take nearly as much of a toll. Perhaps that is the main driving factor, not the hybrid. I do think the wind damage out there probably played some role. There was a substantial difference, and with the data I have now, other than a few outliers, I think April planting was the move this year. Most years it is. Last year the May corn was better than the April corn. If you look at the long-term averages, as long as you can get a good stand of corn up in April, it's kind of the safe bet around here. Around here on the light dirt, stuff that stays wet, getting it in April is a luxury. It's the dark soils with the tile patterns that heat up in the sun that you can get in on. The glider clays, April's a pipe dream most of the time. We very rarely get to plant some of these farms in April. It's just going to be May before the soil gets warm enough to dry. Same applies to the beans, although planting date's even more important to those. I'm not going to open that can of worms. Think of the relationship between rainfall and planting date like a fuel tank. If 2 vehicles start with different amounts of fuel, it makes a big difference to who's going to last the longest in the race, especially given the distance required to travel. The April planted corn had more water in the ground. It got more rain there in April and May. It was farther along in the race before the fuel dried up. The later corn started behind, and there wasn't as much fuel. And that fuel, in a metaphorical way, being the water, because that is our limiting factor this year, without a doubt. Depth tank's dry. Still got some in it, but the pump doesn't reach all the way to the bottom. So once we get to like 15 or 20 gallons, can't use it till it's filled back up. It's not poor design. This pump was made for a 55-gallon drum, not a 275-gallon mini bulk tote. So we've kind of made do with what we had. Is it ideal? No. It was cheaper than buying a new one. Another way to view the planting date and the moisture this season is if you had 2 people that you dropped off in the desert, both of them needed to get to the same point without dying. One of them you dropped off further up the road and also handed it a water bottle, that person would make it the farthest. And in some cases, like that 260 bushel corn, we could argue that it completed the race, whereas this other stuff didn't. It died of dehydration before it could get to the end. Just another way to kind of view that, if that even makes any sense. I've brainstormed an additional point to that. Not only are they walking through the desert trying to beat the race, you add in some wind damage, some green snap, it's like breaking a couple toes before they even start. A lot going on some of these fields. In some cases it helped us, other cases it hurt us. That's farming. I am getting a little sad that our time with the Elmer's Hallmaster is coming to an end. I have absolutely loved running this cart. It is awesome. The cover crop's looking good. We are relocating our fire suppression tool closer to where we will be harvesting. Shouldn't need it, just playing it safe. There are just 2 big fields of corn remaining between us and the end of harvest. Hopefully today is an uneventful day of harvesting corn. It is going to be a somber one. A good neighbor, farmer, and friend next door passed away last night after a battle with an illness. Just hard on the morale of everyone to lose a great member of the community, and definitely will have his family in our thoughts and prayers. We're going to be filling that north bin there, hold another 11 or 12,000. Look at the size of these ears on the end rows. This is right next to the field of beans that made 85. It's good dirt, but we've harvested a lot of good dirt. There is an outlier here. It had to have rained more. Better corn than we've been seeing. You can tell the corn's wet by how it's piling up on the combine hopper. Gotta be rough. Oh, don't slam on your brakes. I would just dump some off. Oh, that's so close. If the yield monitor is accurate, this will be our best corn of the year. Can't even explain it. Beans across the road made 85. This corn's showing 260 plus. I guess it got a lucky rain. Missing your alignment when you're trying to pick with a completely full hopper is a worst case scenario, because if you jam the hydrostat back, you get 20 bushel of corn on the ground. At least Dad was patient this time, unlike that field over west where he spilled quite a bit. A field like this one, being high yielding and the corn still being 19 to 20%, tells us a lot about how the dry weather affected the rest of our corn. This is planted the 11th, it's planted the 15th of May, and it's still 20%, whereas we're picking stuff that was planted earlier, shorter season corn, that's 12%. Everything the same, except for the location.
17%, and then 20%, then 24%, and then 14%.
I guess that's why you gotta look at the average.
So you think the light ground is what's wet?
I would guess that like a normal year where the corn doesn't die early, your light ground is usually farther behind. Dad's trying to make sense of the moisture variation in this field. When you have lighter and darker soil together, the corn on the darker soil grows faster because the soil is warmer. That means that come harvest time, it's typically dried down further as it advances through its life faster. Here, the lighter ground is wetter because it's slower. Yield is great all around versus some of our other fields where it's dry and dead. So if your corn's still wet, I think you're in good shape. What was the average moisture?
18.5.
18,
If that's a point and a half, it'd be 17.
It looked pretty wet though.
Yeah, I know. How much is on there?
130. We're gonna be pretty close to full on that bin.
I'm gonna pick the ends off of this and send to the elevator. It's dry corn, right?
The end should be drier. This is gonna end up as some of the best corn we've ever grown. I don't even know how to explain it. We've got fields struggling to make 200 a mile down the road. You come here and we'll probably have 270 bushel corn. Maybe not quite by the time you shrink the moisture. If you just showed me the speed of the driver, I could tell you who's driving the truck. I know that's Katie for sure. We came out to 278 bushels per acre wet off of the field. Combine showed an average of 18.65%.
Ben was about a half a ring down before Katie started dumping her 300 some bushel.
We've had some issues with the accuracy of the combine moisture monitor. We've seen it to be about 1.5% high. I'm not gonna plan on that. We'll just shrink it at what it says it is. If you take 2.5% shrink by 1.2% points per point, it's about 4 or 5%. Corn made right around 270 dry. Just a stellar performance. There were 3 hybrids on that part of the farm. We're still technically picking the same field, except they're owned by 2 different members of the family, so they get farmed as one, harvested separately, just purely to be fair. The 11135 was strong. The 13777 Pioneer beat it by 7 bushels, according to the combine, if that's right. And then the DeKalb 6465 was also very good. I'm afraid that our 1742, that has had wind damage and rust issues, may still be too wet. If it caught whatever rain, save this farm. And that'll be for the best, because that's my money and Katie's money on the line there. On your right screen, Dad, hit one of those arrows. Hit it again. So the average moisture on this load is 15.96. We'll take note of that because I'm going to load a truck, send it to the elevator, and we will see what the actual moisture is here. That's just for this hopper full on the combine, and compare it to what the elevator says, because that'll give us a better idea. It may be accurate and we may not be shrinking enough. I ended up with one more hopper on the combine. The load on that was 17.3, I believe. We will kind of average those together. The dryer load had more bushels on it. I'm guesstimating maybe like a 16.8 to 17% moisture. We'll have Jeff here radio us back and we will know what it actually is. Dad, Jeff's load was 15% even, so we're almost 2 points high on the monitor. All the bins at home are now full. We're very fortunate to at least have a decent enough crop to fill those. Here's our neighbor Kevin and Wade working some corn stalks and some stubble. They rent our tractor and then another neighbor's Salford. I don't know what model Salford it is. They were really bragging on it yesterday after running it with its ability to work in the stalks. I really ought to hop out there and look at the job it's doing, because I think we need a tool that can bury stalks a little bit better for some corn on corn action. I might be better off just running the 2660 VT twice. The Salfords are pushing really hard into the marketplace lately around here. Dad just came through here with the auger and they've already fixed the pulley knocked off. Just kidding. I assume that's unrelated. We didn't do it. We're at the bin site. Time to get set up and get the combine rolling again. Another close call by Dad. Gotta love him. Gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. Didn't take long to fill that bin up. Dad went in there to top it off. I'm gonna pick a load and get Katie sent to the elevator. Wish I could put that in a bottle and sell it. Insane. 309, 285, 290. 317. There's our NCGA plot right there. %, corn is supposed to look like this. Green is a good thing when the ears are dry. All of these other fields getting harvested at 13% moisture died. They didn't mature. They just stopped filling because the water shortage killed them. Meanwhile, the ones that still have moisture left in the leaves, good plant health thanks to a fungicide, they're kicking out big numbers. 240, 250, there's a 280, 290, and it's not just one spot. It's almost all the way across the fields. You gotta have good performance to get this kind of a dry yield. As my cart scales have shown, we're probably 11 or 12 bushels higher on dry yield. It's nice to have at least one successful field to drown out all the bad ones. A few more rounds and truckloads, we will be headed to our last field of corn. Our operation is ahead of schedule today and this fall in general. Get a little horsepower limited here. 270 bushel corn, 25 acres an hour. That's probably 6,500 bushels an hour. Look at these numbers we're hitting. We are on the high ground right now. This isn't even the lower soil. That's gotta be rain. If your high ground's doing well, you know you caught it right. There's room for a tiny bit more on there, isn't there? With low expectations going into the next and last field, I think it's statistically impossible anything can beat what this field just did. 274 wet on the combine. I mean, I don't have anything to say. That's some of the best corn we've ever raised. There's a lot going on around here. We were picking corn, another neighbor picking corn here, Dan picking corn there, a couple guys working ground. We're gonna move a mile to the south. Might as well be a completely different universe. I got out to talk to you guys, and then a neighbor stopped by and I chatted with him about some happenings in the area. Most of them were not pleasant either. Just not been a good week for a few reasons. The silver lining here, the east field, the lower lying one, ended up about 277 wet. The west field did taper off a little bit. It's got some higher ground. I show like 268 wet. Katie's last load was 16% moisture, so I think the shrink's gonna be less than we realized. The east field's probably in the mid to low 270s dry. West field, maybe 265. I mean, great yields. Some of the best yields I've heard. I'm not taking credit for any of that. I know we do a good job managing. If you look at our other yields, nothing special there, so it's all luck. Most of what farming is. You put your crops in a position to succeed and hope that the dominoes fall in your favor. The next stop is 1 mile north, a lot less productive soil. The Pioneer 1742 out there had some challenges with wind and some rust pressure. I don't know what to expect. I'm a little bit anxious, especially because it's Katie and I's farm. We're renting it, so we need to try to at least break even. This is gonna get our hopes up. Completely different soil. I mean, you go a mile from 140 PI, so like 98th percentile ground, down to 110, which is like what, Class C soil, 60 percentile, 70 percentile, much different. I tend to be less optimistic when I'm the one who can lose the money. I don't know why that is. Of course, we get to the field and Dad can't get the corn head to fully unfold. The snouts won't go down. This happened last year and we had something broken here on the fold arms.
Dirt in there, cheap enough to go in.
I doubt it. Dad and I cleaned some debris out from the folding mechanisms and the position sensors and unfolded. I want to look at the yield monitor like I normally would, except I kind of don't want to look at the same time. I have a fear of failure. He's picked one 12-row through on the outside, typically the worst spot. And I'm greeted by his residue management screen. The suspense is killing me. Oh, 200 even. That's better than nothing. Our break even with inputs and rent is kind of in that 195-ish range, 190. And there's a 170, 190. 117-day corn planted mid-May. 10% moisture. How's that possible? So far, the worst part of the worst individual field has been harvested. I think it's making 203 or 204 dry. If we make money, I guess that's better than losing money. And there's a lot of field left. It can go up or it probably can also go down. Depending on the final yield of this farm, Katie and I are maybe 45 to 50% sold at about 50 cents higher than what the market is right now. We're on a different edge that has looked better from the imagery all year. Yields here, much better. That'll bring us into profitability at that rate. Dad also adjusted the moisture monitor 1.5 points down, so this should be closer to reality. I'm afraid we may take a little dock at the elevator. Here's what it is. There's about as much darkness as sunshine, metaphorically, in this field. This super light, low productivity Hilltop is not good. It definitely died from the dry weather. We can appreciate 150 bushel corn, given that it probably died, what, 8 weeks early versus when it should have. It's bringing our average down, yet when it gets off the hill, we're picking 220 to 230 bushel corn. I believe overall, based on my very little experience with this farm, this field, particularly the area we're picking right now, is the worst one. I mean that with all due respect. Here's the vegetation index, which is basically a color scale of the NDVI satellite imagery back on the 1st of September. The yield map should follow these colors pretty much in line. This stuff is not good at all. And then you get off here into the better spots. You're picking okay corn. 220, 200, 220, 200, 230, 200, 240, 240, 200. Here's some of that 150 bushel corn. Ear potential is insane. Look at the length of this. No girth to her. She died early. Those are some of the tiniest kernels I've seen this year. This should be one of the worst farms. I'm confident though in the long-term potential of it, because some of these theoretically poor soils actually have seen the greatest advancements in yield potential if it rains. That's the big if. You can't buy rain unless you have a center pivot, and this is not center pivot country. I talked to a neighbor around here this morning and mentioned how humbling of a mile it is from north to south here. He farms the same diversity of soil, from black central Illinois, highly productive stuff, to some of this lighter southern Illinois soil. He said that his light soil, like this farm, is struggling quite a bit. I think 200, given the season, is actually probably going to be a pretty darn good yield, if we even finish that high. Here's an ear from one of the better spots in the field. Kernel count is just as good as up there on the high ground where it died. The ear itself isn't really that big in terms of kernels. Even in this spot, the kernels aren't fully developed, they're small. It's making 220 to 230. We don't have a full finish here. Not nearly as tragic as up there, where it's probably half the size of these ears with the same kernel count. The other thing that's working against us is our best yielding spots is where the wind damage is the worst. Look at that. For every ear you have that looks really good, you have a plant like this one here that has a runt on it. Wind damage, runt, wind damage, runt with ear smut, wind damage or something else. The first 40 acres, and hopefully the worst, came out around 208 dry on the grain cart scales. We're on to the second 40 here. Corn looks a little bit better, so maybe it'll bring the average up. 208, I'd be happy with that based on what I'm hearing. A lot of the neighbors are talking 180 to 200. I'm not saying we're better farmers. I know a lot of guys skipped on fungicide. I don't think that was the move this year. Personally, I've seen pretty compelling anecdotal evidence that you should have been spraying fungicide. It's easy to tell that the row sense is kind of jolting the combine around in the down corn, because the machine sync perfectly tries to mimic what the combine's doing. Watch my front tires. It's usually just a laser straight line. Here, not so much. Yields definitely improved as we crossed the road. The corn on corn field made 232.5 wet. I don't know the average moisture, probably 17 to 18. If you shrink off, say 3 to 4%, you're closer to probably 220-ish, maybe 221, 222. It's a different field. I was expecting the corn on corn to have some yield drag. I noticed out here that the wind damage was worse, yet the top end yield and the moisture was higher. The corn on corn possibly could have helped with all that extra material on the ground in a dry season. Perhaps that boosted yields could have had nothing to do with that. It might have just been this 40's better than the other 40. Sometimes things are that simple in farming. With the new crop bean prices, corn prices, and my risk assessment of both crops on this farm, I'm actually considering going back corn on corn here. It just seems like a safer bet. I think I can raise 220 bushel corn more confidently than I can raise 70 bushel beans, not relying on a government payment. That's the only thing that can get beans in the ballpark of corn, and part of the reason why so many acres of corn got planted. It's just the lesser of two evils. The management on all three of these farms were the same. Only thing different on this corn on corn field, we worked it twice with the vertical till. If I go corn on corn again, I'm considering either working everything twice with the vertical till, so less depth in churning but more chopping, or we're gonna get the disc gripper out and disc grip it 8 or 9, 10 inches deep. I'd love to know what you guys suggest. In a perfect world, we'd have a nice $300,000 strip till bar, and you just run a strip through here with your fertilizer and not have to come back. We don't have that.
Next row.
Corn on corn makes me slightly nervous. This field yielding well alleviates some of that. I think you have to manage corn on corn a little bit differently. Your nitrogen needs to be more aggressive. Tillage probably more aggressive. Hybrid choice, you gotta pick one that likes corn on corn, can handle emerging and residue. And of course you've got to watch the fungal pathogens. It might even be worth considering a 2-pass fungicide, something light, generic up front, and then come back with the full meal deal like Fearless Neo later. The family that owns this farm no longer farms around here. I think they're 2 generations removed now from actively farming. You can tell where they once upon a time parked something at the edge of the barn lot and unhooked it. Really neat. I've got to give the Pioneer 1742 some credit. Despite being twisted up like a pretzel and on some extremely drought-prone soil, it's clawed itself back in there from a field average standpoint. It may beat some of our better farms. I don't know if they didn't catch rain, this one did. It's kind of one of those years where there's a lot of things that are hard to pin down. I've learned that it's best to slow the gate down when you're trying to pile up if you've got a short-walled truck. I've got to pile pretty high to get even a legal amount on. If you get a big 40-foot trailer, you just put a little plop here, plop there, and you'd be done. Based on my scales, this whole field made 221 wet. Moisture is questionable because I thought we were sending a lot of 17% loads to the elevator, 17 and change, according to the combine, and we've adjusted it downward. Yet Jeff told me that the wettest load he's hauled off this field was in the low 15, so 221 may be close to the actual dry yields. Now, that corn on corn field was definitely wetter. I think that will show. I had some hand samples taken at the bin because I need to be able to get the final yield for the way this lease is set up. Still got one of my souvenir ears right here. It's a tiny little guy. We made our yield here almost entirely by just massive amounts of kernels. I know it's tacky to play this game. If we'd caught some rains, I genuinely think we've got at least 260 plus bushel corn out here. Just up the road, 275, here, 215. Different hybrid, same day planting, a little bit different management.